everyone. This time, we're going to talk about two types of team sports. First is the soccer game and second is the football game. First, we are going to define football and soccer. Football. The name football is a shortened version of the official name of the game, Association Football. Association football was the term coined in 1863 when the Football Association codified the rules of the game. The word association was added to distinguish it from other games such as rugby football. So the football is a game which is played by two teams with 11 players, using any part of their bodies except the hands and the arms. Its goal is to try to move the ball into the opposing team's goal. While the soccer is believed to be derived from the term association football, with rugby football often being shortened to rugger. A similar thing occurred with association football. Just the same with football, soccer is played by two teams with 11 players and with the object that propel a round ball into the opponent's goal by kicking or by hitting it with any parts of the body except hands and arms. Next, the difference between soccer and football. The answer is quite clear as soccer and American football are two completely different games. Soccer is played with a round ball that can be kicked and headed. American football, however, is more of a rugby-type game in which the oblong-shaped ball is thrown and passed as well as kicked. In the rest of the world, however, the word football does not mean American football. It means association football, also known as soccer. That means when read this way, the original question doesn't actually make sense with football and soccer actually being the same thing. So when we say soccer, the object being used is a round ball, while in football, an oblong-shaped ball is being used. Soccer, you score by goals, while the other one, football, you score by points. Let us talk about now the history of football. Football, or the soccer game called in other parts of the world, has a long story. Football in its current form arose in England in the middle of the 19th century, but alternative versions of the game existed much earlier and are part of the football history. Football's modern origins began in England more than 100 years ago, in 1863. Rugby football and association football, once the same thing, went their separate ways, and the Football Association, the first official governing body for the sport, was established. Records show that in 1314, the Lord Mayor of London banned football in the city due to it causing chaos. Despite the opposition for the game, football thrived in Britain from the 8th to 19th century. However, a standardized version of the game was still a rarity as regional versions often gained favor. These different versions of the game were knitted up to eventually become association football, rugby football, and Gaelic football, all of which contributed to the contemporary equivalent of the game we play today. Even though the official rules of modern football were dictated in 1863, when the Football Association was established, the specifications of the ball were not standardized for another 8 years. 8 years after it was founded, the Football Association had established 50 member clubs. That's when, in 1872, the FA Cup was born, with the first championship in the world by 1888. The Fédération Internationale de Football Association, or the FIFA, was established in Paris in 1904. Its founding members included Belgium, France, Denmark, the Netherlands, Spain, Sweden, and Switzerland. By the 1950s, after the Second World War, there were more than 73 FIFA members. Next, let us go to the early history in the precursors of football. The first known examples of a team game involving a ball, which was made out of a rock, occurred in old Mesoamerican cultures for over 3,000 years ago. It was by the Aztecs called Chatali, although various versions of the game were spread over large regions. There are, however, a number of examples of games which can be seen as precursors to football throughout the ancient world. The very earliest precursor to football, for which there's scientific evidence, is a game called Chu-Chu, which dates back to 2nd and 3rd century of China. So other variety of ball games had been known from ancient Greece. The ball was made by shreds of leather filled with hair. The first documents of balls filled with air are from the 7th century. So in today's footballs are made of rubber with leather panels on top. Manufacturers modify the leather panels with a grainy texture to improve the grip. The journey of the football has progressed from a pig's bladder through to leather, India rubber, and vulcanized rubber. The game of football takes its form. The highest governing body of football is the FIFA, or the Fédération Internationale de Football Association. It is first played in the middle 19th century in England. It is played by two teams with 11 players including the goalkeeper, and it uses an oblong-shaped ball. During gameplay, players attempt to create goal-scoring opportunities through individual control of the ball, such as by dribbling, passing the ball to a teammate, and by taking shots at the goal, which is guarded by the opposing goalkeeper. Opposing players may try to regain control of the ball by intercepting a pass or through tackling the opponent in possession of the ball. However, physical contact between opponents is restricted. Football is generally a free-flowing game, with play stopping only when the ball has left the field of play or when play is stopped by the referee of an infringement of the rules.
The first football clubs. Football clubs have been existed since 15th century but unorganized and without official status. Therefore, it is hard to decide which was the first football club was. But according to my research, the first football club was the Sheffield Football Club in 1857. The club is recognized by the FIFA, or the Federation of International Football Association, as the oldest existing club still playing football in the world. Sheffield Federation Club initially played games under the Sheffield rules and did not officially adopt the new Federation Association rules until 1878. Football was dominated by public school teams, but later teams consisting by workers would make up the majority. Another change was successfully taking place when some clubs became willing to pay the best players to join their team. This would be the start of a long period of transition, not without friction, in which the game would develop to a professional level. It means that the public school teams have the power to control the game, but later it was developed because of consisting themes. Another one is a lot of clubs willing to join the game, and they are willing to pay the best players to join their team in order for them to win the game. This would be the start of a long transition or change, not without friction. It means without disagreement or tension between a group of people or between a group of different clubs. By this, the game would develop to a professional level. In 1855, professional football was legalized, and 3 years later, the Football League was established. During the first season, 12 clubs joined the league, but soon more clubs became interested and the competition would consequently expand more into divisions. As with many things in history, women were for a long time excluded from participating in games. It is not before the late 19th century that women started to play football. The first official women's game took place in Inverness, 1888. But as we look into today's generations, a lot of women players and a lot of women clubs have joined the different games, especially the football. That is one of the reasons also why women empowerment is still going on. The first competition was the England and the Scotland that ended 0-0. In 1883, the first international tournament took place and included four national teams, which is the England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. Football was a long-time British phenomenon, but it gradually spread to other European countries. The first game that took place outside Europe occurred in Argentina in 1867, but it was foreign British workers who were involved and not Argentinian citizens. In 1908, wood football for the first time included as an official sport in Olympic Games, until the first FIFA World Cup was played in 1930. The Olympic Football Games tournament would rank as the most prestigious on the national level. Globalization of the biggest sport in the world. In the late 19th century, only a few national football teams existed. England and Scotland has the first active team that played games against each other in 1870s. Just like what I said before, the England and the Scotland was the first teams who joined the competitions. Today, there are 211 national associations included in the Federation Internationale de Football Associations, the world governing body of the sport. Another proof of the globalization could be seen in increase of nations participating in the World Cup qualifiers, from 32 in 1934 over 200 in 2014. A quote from David Goldblatt's book, "The ball is round, present one answer." He says it offers the spotlight for individual brilliance while relishing the defiance and heart of collective endeavor. It has tag, tragedy and comedy, epic and pantomime, unsophisticated music hall, and inaccessible experimental performance. It does imperious triumph, lucky escape, impossible comeback, and stubborn stalemates. It captures the brilliance of unpredictability, the uncertainty of human heart and human skill, of improvisation and chance. That is why football is definitely a global sport, and without comparison, the biggest in the world. I know that some of us here are still confused from the word soccer or football. Is it because we think that they are the same thing? But as we look for its history, England is credited to the through development of the game and transitioned the name from soccer to football, ultimately influencing its current existence. We notice many people use soccer and football interchangeably. This is because in most part of the world, football stands for chess of green pitch. However, in United States and Canada, soccer is used to differentiate itself from American football, a very, very different game. The English also established the uniform rules of the sport, including the most important one about never touching the ball with your hands. As more and more people continued to play the sport, more rules were gradually implemented and adjusted accordingly. Some of the biggest implementations included the initiation of the penalty kick in 1891, red and yellow cards in 1970, and more recently the addition of the VAR, or the Video Assistant Referee, in 2016 during an international friendly game to help new controversial plays. And now, soccer has come a long way since it started and continues to develop constantly. A more formal name sometimes used in association football, but in popular speech, it is either football or soccer.
So next, let's proceed to the football history timeline. So first, the 5000 to 300 BC,
Chinese military invent the choo-choo.
1500 BC, there was possibly a version of a type ball game played by young women in Egypt during the age of Bakit-tree. So in 1000 BC, the Japanese version of soccer was called Kimari. Next, we have the BC. In ancient Greece, they played a game called Episkyrus, 600 to 1600s AD. In Mexico, as Central America, the rubber ball was created and used in the game on a recessed court 40 to 50 feet long, shaped like a capital T. 700s, the first football games played in Britain was between the locals of East of England. So in 1331, slid King Edward III of England to pass laws in 1331 to stop the game. So in 1424, King James I of Scotland also passed a law banning the game. 1500s, in Italy they played a game called Calcio with teams of 27 plus people. So in 1605, football became legal again in England. In 1620, in the original Jamestown settlement played a game called Pasukwa Kohowog, meaning they gathered to play ball with the foot. So in 1815, Eton College of England established a set of rules for the games. So diri na nagsugod sa England, ang England nga nag-establish ng rules para sa mga games. 1820, in the USA football was played among the Northeastern universities and colleges of Harvard, Princeton, Amherst, and Brown. So in 1848, standardized as the Cambridge Rules. In 1863, Football Association was formed when 11 London schools and clubs came together at the Freemasons Tavern to establish a single set of rules to administer any football match that were to be played among them. In 1869, the Football Association rules were further amended to exclude any handling of the ball. So, sa 1872, the first official international football match was played between the national teams of Scotland and England. 1883, the four British associations agreed on a uniform code and formed the International Football Associations Board. So, din na sa 1883, din na siya na bali nag-agreed ang mga associations nga dapat may mga uniform code or dress code ang ilang mga players. Sa 1885, the first international match. 1888, introduction of the penalty kick was published. Dahil na siya sa 1888. May mga penalties na kung prohibit. 1990, soccer played at the Olympic Games for the first time. So, dali na niya sa 1900s ang nagsugod ang Olympic Games. So, sa 1904, establishment of FIFA by delegates from France, Belgium, Denmark, the Netherlands, Spain, Sweden, and Switzerland at a meeting in Paris on the 21st of May. So, sa 1930, the Federation Internationale de Football Association, or the what we called FIFA, held soccer's first World Cup tournament in Montevideo, Uruguay with 13 teams. So, sa 1930, dari na niya ang FIFA na held ang World Cup tournament in Montevideo, Uruguay, which has the 13 teams. In 1932, soccer was taken off the program for the Olympic Games in Los Angeles. So, sa 1991, the inaugural Women's World Cup in 1991 in China was won by the United States. So, sa 1991, during the Women's World Cup, between China and United States, ang nagdaog is ang China. 1996, the American women's team won the first ever women's soccer event at the Olympics. Sa 1996 naman niya ang nagdaog sa first women's soccer event sa Olympics is the American players.
The history of soccer. Professional soccer has been around in England since the 1800s, but some say the game was created 2,000 years ago by the Aztecs using a rubber ball. Others say a version of the game was played in China as far as back as the 3rd century BC. The fact is, we'll never know when or on what continent soccer was invented. The early version of soccer was called football, and it barely resembles the modern sport as it involved punching the ball with your fists and violently tackling the opposing team. It did focus on kicking, but the game was far too violent. It wasn't until the 1800s, after the British government had banned it for centuries, that it was re-established as a winter sport with much safer rules. In 1848, a group of students from Cambridge University wrote a set of 11 rules which everyone could agree upon, nailed to the trees surrounding Parker's Piece. This was the first time that the football as we know it had any formalized laws.
Early professional soccer. The Industrial Revolution changed the landscape of soccer. In addition to schoolboys, factory workers took up the sport and created labor-centered teams. Soccer became a social athletic activity that would be played after work. With the introduction of railroads, teams could now travel to one another and compete. This is how the earliest versions of soccer leagues were invented. Although it's a player-focused game, success within the teammates relies on cohesive teamwork between players. Whether it's a competitive and organized match between clubs or just pick up the game in the park with friends, individuals come together and combine their talents to win a game by using their own strength and simultaneously relying on their teammates in areas where they falter. Its simplicity, worldliness, and positive impact on its culture constantly shape the sport of soccer in a new way, and continue to be the reason why it's dubbed the beautiful game.
So next we have the international play. So for a long time, soccer was mainly a British sport, but gradually the game spread to Central Europe and beyond. In 1889, countries like Denmark and the Netherlands were the first outside of the UK to form their own football associations. They were swiftly followed by New Zealand in 1891, Argentina in 1893, and Belgium in 1895. The international popularity of soccer led to the establishment of the Federation Internationale de Football Association, or the what we called FIFA, in 1904. So in short, soccer was the main sport in British, followed by the European in 1889. Denmark and Netherlands is the first football form on their own association, followed by the Netherlands in 1891, Argentina in 1893, and 1895 in Belgium.
Asia, Africa, and the MLS. 21 teams entered FIFA in 1966, including teams from Asia and Africa. New associations were created to ensure inclusion and standardization internationally. Now, the world regions have been divided into 6 confederations. These are the Confédération Africaine de Football, CAF, the Asian Football Confederation, AFC, the Union des Associations Europeans de Football, UEFA, and Confederation of North, Central America, and Caribbean Association Football, Oceania Football Confederation, OFC, and Confederación Sudamericana de Football. In 1994, United States hosted a World Cup, sparking the soccer craze in North America. At the time, US Soccer is committed to developing a Division I professional soccer league. Major League Soccer. The MLS is highly regarded soccer league and has been home to many international soccer stars like David Beckham and Thierry Henry.
Soccer is now one of the most watched sports in the world. Soccer is more than just a fun, popular, or international sport. It plays a role in international development by funding global education, effecting positive social change, and producing renewable energy.
Formation and tactics in playing football. The core of football tactics is the formation of the team. In football or soccer, the formation are classified in names consisting of numbers that represent defenders, midfielders, and attackers. The goalkeeper is unnecessarily too involved in the tactical aspect. Formation are simplified ways to describe a team's positional tactic schematically. As Jonathan Wilson writes in Inverting the Pyramid, designation of formation can at times seem a little arbitrary. Here is the historical overview of the most utilized formation in football, the 1-1-8. You probably never guessed the existing of this formation in serious circumstances. It was a while ago, though more exactly in the 19th century, in the pre-modern era of football, to use only one defense player and one midfielder and put the rest on attack seemed crazy today. But the matches look different at the current time, with minimal passing and sideways, and instead of full attack with match dribbling going on. The reason for all that dribbling was not just because football in these days lacked sophistication, but more due to the fact that the offside rule was completely different from what it is today. Until 1925, the rules prescribed that a player was not allowed to be ahead of the ball, in some respects more similar to ice hockey than modern football, and as a result to dribble it forward. Another early formation connected with the dribbling game was 2-1-7, among other teams associated with old Uturians. 2-3-5. In the 1890s, 2-3-5, the pyramid became popular as a more balanced tactical formation. It would become standard for a long time and was used by all British teams. The transition from 1-1-8 to 2-3-5 did not happen overnight, though the formations such as 2-2-6 and 1-2-7 had been taken into practice between. With the popularity of this setup, the standardization followed with numbers linked to the position on the field. The introduction of the offside rule in 1925 started a development of other formation more adapted to the offside. WM. One of the first side steps from well-established 2-3-5 was the WM. The attacking cluster is W formatted and the defending cluster is M formatted, or 3-2-2-3. The innovator of the great football theoretician Herbert Chapman during the time as manager for Arsenal in the early 1930s. It was a formation used by many teams in 1950 World Cup, although not by the winning team Uruguay. 3-5. After the change of the offside rule in 1935, both attacking and defending strategies would transform and new playing system as a result emerged. The altered offside rule would benefit the attacking side, so a third defender was more often taken into consideration. Another formation used at this period was 3-4-4, but it was obviously still an emphasis on attack. Ahead of 3 defenders and 2 midfielders, there was a 5-man offense. The offense was organized with 1 center forward, flanked by double wing on the both sides. Among the most successful team with this formation was Arsenal. 2-3-2-3. Instead of the usual defender midfielder forward configuration, the so-called Metodo system brought a formation with 4 units into practice. This formation was used by Italy and helped the team to win the 1934 and 1938 World Cups.
4-2-4 formations. This formations was the product of Brazil. It was originated in early 1950s. The 4-2-4 formation is made up of 4 defenders, 2 midfielders, and 4 attackers. As you might surmise from the distribution of players, it's considerable a particularly attacking formation with 4 players stationed in the opposition's final third. The back 4 will consist of a right back, 2 center backs, and left back in front of them will set 2 central midfielders whose job is primarily defensive. These central midfielders form a double pivot, focus on screening the defenders, cutting out opposition attacks, and moving the ball forwards to teammates higher up the pitch. At its core, 4-2-4 is a counter-attacking formation that designed to make the most of those moments when you catch the oppositions in the breaks. Its key strength is the ability to create overloads in advanced areas of the pitch, with 4 attacking players stationed in the dangerous areas waiting to pounce. The attacking advantage created by the 4-2-4 formations make it tempting setup for any offensive-minded coach whose tactics tends to revolve around counterattacks. The weaknesses of the 4-2-4 formations. Central midfield is often where soccer matches are won and lost. Any central midfielder needs to be versatile, capable of passing and intercepting the ball, progressing it up the pitch, and moving dynamically. This is even more crucial when you're playing with a double pivot of just 2 central midfielders. The winger roles within the shape can also be very demanding. Any player operating as a winger in the system needs to have a serious burst of speed, strong crossing skills, and an ability to deliver a final product consistently, because often, counter-attacking chances will be a few and far between, and teams need to be able to take advantage. And by playing these formations, you're essentially surrendering positions to your opponents for large products of the game. These days, that's not something most coaches want to be doing. But always remember that there are always pros and cons when it comes to tactic setups in soccer. The 4-2-4 shape occurs great offensive options, but there are some weaknesses which are worth bearing in mind. The 4-3-3 formations. It is undoubtedly the most popular soccer formations used in the modern game. It is also one of the few formations that seem to be effective at the youth level as it is the professional one. 4-3-3 formation is made up of 3 distinctive lines or units. Ahead of the goalkeeper, the formation uses an additional back four, which consists of 2 central defenders and a left and right fullback. The midfield unit comprises 3 central midfielders who can line up in a number of ways. The most common shape is a midfield triangle with 1 central defensive midfielders and 2 more advanced midfielders on either side of them. The central defensive midfielder is sometimes referred to as a traditional number 6 or a single pivot. One of the main strengths of the 4-3-3 soccer formation is the balance and strength of the formation occurs in all areas of the field. The spine of the team consists of 2 center backs, 3 central midfielders, and a striker. The strong spine means a team can confidently dominate positions in the field's defensive, middle, and attacking thirds. Equally, with a fullback and winger on each side of the pitch, the team is well balanced to provide attacking threats and defensive stability in a wide areas. One of the main weaknesses of the 4-3-3 formation is that it can be extremely vulnerable to counter-attacking play. This is especially true when the 4-3-3 playing team's fullback push up high to join the attack. Counter-attacking teams can focus on the space the fullbacks leave behind them and use passive forwards to break quick. Teams choose to keep their wingers high and wide. There is also a danger of the lone striker becoming isolated while playing directly against 2 central defenders. As a consequence, the striker may struggle to get involved in the games, find space, and get chances to score.
So next, let's proceed to the 5-4-1. This formation with 5 defending players was developed by the famous intercoach Helenio Herrera. So the 5-4-1 system was focused on defense but also allowed counter-attacks. So ang nag-discover or ang nag-develop sa 5-4-1 formation is si Coach Helenio Herrera. So both Italian clubs and the Italian national team had success with 5-4-1, including the World Club silver medal won in 1970. So the 5-4-1 means the GK is the goalkeeper, CD or the central defender, and the WB wingback, and the CM central midfielder, W is winger, CF is central forward.
So next, let's
let's proceed to the 4-4-2 formation. 4-4-2 formation was a development of the 4-3-3 utilized by Swedish clubs like IFK, Gothenburg, and the Malmö FF, which lead to some international successes for these teams. So the invention is otherwise attributed to the Soviet Russian coach, Coach Viktor Maslov. So the playing system included factors of collective strategy and with players working over a big part of the field. So many teams around the world use the 4-4-2 formation today, and it is especially preferred in British tap football. So let's try to look at the table above and for us to more understand what is the 4-4-2 formation is all about. So just take a look to the table.
Next is the 3-5-2 formation. In contrast to the 4-4-2 formation, 3-5-2 would put more emphasis on individual skills. West Germany won the World Cup in 1990 practicing this formation, and it is often used in football of today. It is uncertain when it was first used. Some say it materialized when Miroslav Blažević coached Dinamo Zagreb in the middle 1950s. The positions of the players could be arranged in some different ways. One alternative is with an offensive midfielder behind the forwards as the picture above suggests. Please see the picture in order to understand more about the 3-5-2 formation. And the last formation is the 4-2-3-1. The 4-2-3-1 formation is a modification of the 4-4-2 and was first used widely in top-level football in the 2010 World Cup. In front of the 4 defenders and behind the lonely forward, there are 2 defensive and 3 offensive midfielders. This formation is used by tons of clubs in elite football and is, for example, the most used system in the Spanish La Liga. As you can see in the image, it is the 4-2-3-1 formation example. As one reminder says, no tactic formation is the best. No formation is optimal in all situations. What is best depends on different circumstances. The formation should, for example, be based on the opponent and the players the manager has to his disposal. That's all for today, and I hope you have learned something from us today. Thank you and God bless us all.